On this brand new episode of Screenblend, we have a look at video game movies. Which ones are bad, which ones are good, and we give our recommendations for a type of film that's really gone in ups and downs over time. Also, coronavirus is still delaying production of a lot of movies, as we expected. Which ones are now delayed, we'll tell you. And finally, Sony Spider-Verse has an official name. It's not Sony Spider-Verse, it's something much worse. How do people get paid for this? We don't know. Make sure you enjoy today's episode of Screenblend.
All right, everyone, welcome to Screenblend episode 7. Today we'll be talking about video game adaptations and video game films. This is my co-host, Will Cutts.
Hello, Jack. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. Yeah, got my latte. It's actually a pretty shit day, but that's why we're here.
No, it's not looking. It's actually a lot better than it was last week. Last week was a shocker here in Adelaide, as you see some spots in Australia right now. Got sun, and I know my cousin's up in Queensland. It's perfect weather, and they're allowed to go outside now. But at least we can, and everything's moving in a pretty nice direction for us here in Adelaide. And South Australia is looking not too bad at the moment. Still a long way to go, but we're all pretty good.
Yeah. It's not stopping many people. Lots of people out at the beach.
Yes, I know, but that's what like Mace today. I don't know, for our visual watchers, you can see I've got a little bit of a red tinge here. I don't think we haven't been seeing enough sun. I think that's a lot of a problem for people. So make sure you slip, slop, slap people when you go outside now after you've been isolating for a while, because you wouldn't have had much vitamin D.
There you go. There's some tips for you. I really don't think anyone's going to say anything, but sure. There you go.
You never know. You never know.
No, you're right. You're right.
Going out there early, just a bit of banter to start the show, Mace. And also for everyone, these are all up on YouTube too. So Mason, I've just been chucking them up the whole episodes without you knowing at the moment. So make sure you know.
Are you kidding me right now?
No, I'm not kidding. I just chuck up the whole episodes.
Oh God! All right, we'll discuss this after.
I'm just putting it up there. So for everyone, it's there if you need to. And Mace, where can everyone follow you again?
Yeah, so Jack_Mason22 on Insta and Twitter. And then you've got my TikTok of JackieBoys22.
So Jack, on your TikTok, you've got some great videos, I have to say. You don't get enough views for.
No, I don't get enough love. I'm not
I'm
not a girl aged between 16 and 20 doing dancing. So
you could be.
I have that against me.
You could be 100%. And everyone, you can follow me on Will Be Cuts on all the various social media platforms. So Mace, we're talking video game movies today, but my favorite part of the show always is your news segment.
Thanks, Kat.
So what's on the news this week?
Sarcastic.
Not
all
being
right.
sarcastic, but things are coming back now. There's some more news.
Yeah, so earlier this week, or late last week, I should say, LeBron, he announced Space Jam 2 through one of his Instagram images with a hat. And so the new Space Jam film will be coming out in 2022, and it will be called Space Jam Legacy.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm not sure about you, but I grew up with the first Space Jam, so I'm pretty keen about this one.
Did you say it was coming out in 2021 or 2022?
Is it 2021?
His caption saying 2021.
Oh, yeah, I doubt that. But sure, 2021. I think that's wishful thinking on his behalf.
I'm just watching the video again now, and he needed to flip it because it's all back to front. Like, he's a good basketball player, but come on,
can't do a good Instagram.
Get your socials going, because he needed to flip it. But, yeah, look at him.
Oh, sorry about that mistake.
No, that's all right, Jack. We all make mistakes. We just had a tick there, your mistake counter for today. Thoughts on that? Thoughts on that, Mace? Obviously, you're excited.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it will be run very similar. He'll take Michael Jordan's place, from the other one, and he'll, go into a Looney Tunes based world. I don't know. I don't know where they can really take it, but you and me, we'll be in that cinema come 2021.
I think it's one of those weird ones because if you rewatch back that movie, I think the nostalgia keeps it going, but I don't know how good it actually is, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's just a nostalgia hit because I think we look back at some of those movies and I go, it's good, but is it really more just that our childhood, that we could rewatch that movie so many times. And that's why I hope that.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what demographic they're looking at for this one. Are they going a bit older for people like us who saw the first one, or is it going to? It's that fine line of how do they do it? Is it like just for the
Mm.
younger generation, or is it trying to connect all basketball fans to come watch it? It will do well at the box office no matter what, because
Mm.
you got LeBron and you got some of the other big basketball players there. So some of your favorite athletes too, Jack.
Almost definitely. No Jordan, don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but still some of my favorites for sure.
Yeah.
And then another news as well. We should have done the bit of this last week, but Last of Us 2
Yeah.
has briefly leaked with a few twists coming out on the internet. And at first, they did think it was a leak from one of the Naughty Dog employees over a bit of crunch at the studio. But it's now, as news is slowly kind of leaking out, it was just kind of a hacker who got into some old code, which they're still using down at the studio, and somehow gotten through that in order to leak the information. So for fans of the game, that's now coming out on June 27th.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure whether, this leak caused Naughty Dog to bring up the release schedule just to be sure nothing else was leaked and, it'd be ruined before anyone got their hands on it. But yeah, so new release date for Last of Us. And just watch out if on your socials for any spoilers for the next 2 months.
I think it's a weird one because it was obviously supposed to be out now. Now it's come back, and I just don't know. We were talking off air before about how all this stuff can sort of get out. It's just a time we live in now, especially when there's no content coming out, that people are just trying to get into old code and try and find stuff and leak it. Just don't read it. Just try and not read it and I just want to get through to that game because I just don't want anything spoiled at the moment.
Yeah, you can add stuff to your browser that hides all kind of spoilers.
Yeah.
So I'd probably recommend looking at an extension for your Chrome or something to do
Can
that.
you do that, Jack? I didn't know you could do that.
You can. There's actually a thing you can type in keywords to avoid, and then as you go through your Google or your search browser, it actually eliminates certain words so nothing comes up.
Oh, very
yeah.
good.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So, and then lucky last news, it's more movie delays as well. So, John Wick 4 has now an officially 2022 release date, and Lionsgate has also delayed a few more movies. So, filling the May 21 spot left by Chapter 4, John Wick will be Spiral, which is the Saw reboot that the studio originally dated for May 15th, 2020. So, next week essentially. And so that will release then, and the Ryan Reynolds and Samuel L. Jackson sequel, The Hitman's Wife Bodyguard, is being pushed back the year from August 2020 to August 2021. I didn't even know that was a sequel. So, and I don't know why it's being made. The first one was all right, but
yeah, it's not great for me. Like that, I just feel like that's a classic Ryan Reynolds, Samuel L. Jackson payday. We're going to shoot for 3 weeks, a month, and just knock out a movie. And it's a cash grab. It's a cash grab, but they'll go out and do it, and it will be all right. So I got a couple of things I want to bring up. We spoke about Netflix's Extraction last week. At the end of the show.
Great film.
But both of us really enjoyed it. It's hit and already broken a lot of Netflix records. I know a lot of people are then trying to be like, well, I haven't watched it, so how's it hit the records? But everyone at the moment is saying we will be coming back most likely for a sequel or a prequel. Is that something you'd be interested in seeing, Mace?
Oh, for sure. I'd be quite interested to see a prequel, see how, Chris Hemsworth, rises up, as the mercenary. But I'd love to see how they would do a sequel too.
I think it's for me, Netflix is onto something here because they can really put a bankable star in Hemsworth. I know this is a topic we want to speak about in a couple of weeks, is like bankable stars, but I think he's bankable from a Netflix perspective. Because when you're sitting at home on a Saturday night, especially in the time we're in now, maybe again, if there's no quarantine, self-isolation, etc., maybe this doesn't do as well. But apparently it's reached 90 million households in its first couple of weeks. What's the most? And they've obviously been pushing it very hard. So again, what it would get in a cinema, I'm not 100% sure if people would actually go out and see this. But since it's just been streamed right into your home, I think this is a Netflix bang on, very good. So I'm very excited for another one, and I think it's a good series, and I could see them doing one of these every couple of years, sort of being a bankable sort of Netflix staple, for example. And again, it's just going to be whether it's in Extraction or do you change the name of it? And it's just this sort of, is it Tyler Rake series? So then you just have like one called like Infiltration or something like, but like just different things
like a
because you
Tom
can't just,
Clancy.
yeah,
Yeah.
you just can't keep extracting people because it's the same thing. So then you have to change it a little bit. And I would be interested in seeing something like that. And there's some cool stuff out on Netflix at the moment on their socials with some behind the scenes stuff too, of the making of that movie. Again, the director's a bit of a nutter. And when I say nutter, like a cool nutter, he was on the end of, he was the one filming in those car sequences and stuff too. He was sitting on the front of the cars as they're driving, holding the cameras and stuff. What I thought was pretty cool, seeing the behind the scenes, and he's a real stunt man. So I thought that was good. The next thing that I wanted to have a chat about was everyone's favorite Marvel series. I just deleted the link because I want to get this 100% right.
Okay. Yeah. So, in short,
Yeah,
how should I say? Sony Studios
yeah.
have named their Spider-Man universe that comprises of all the villains. So, so far we've seen the Venom film. We've got Morbius coming out as well. So they've actually given an official title similar to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So, Will, take it away.
I would say, Jack, it is not similar to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And like the DCEU or DCU, I think has a ring to it. This one is the Spider-Man. No, is it Spider-Man? No, so it's the Sony Pictures universe of Marvel characters.
Wow.
Can you please get me a bucket?
Yeah,
For me,
not great.
simply it should have been Sony Pictures Spider-Verse or Spider-Verse of Sony Pictures. Something like that. The fact is you've shoehorned in Marvel in there is to try and get obviously the general public to look at it and go, oh, it's Marvel characters. I want to come and watch this because they sort of know. The general public, I don't think, also knows that Tom Holland's Spider-Man is done by Sony or MCU. I don't think the general public really understands that difference. They probably just think Tom Holland is a part of the MCU. I just think it's funny because, as we said off air beforehand, how many people would be sitting in a big boardroom at the moment and going, that's the one we want. We want a bit of spamuck to really get our universe going.
Yeah, that acronym does not sound good, does it?
No, I think it's for me, you look at it and you go like, Venom's coming out. I don't mind the first one. Still wasn't a massive fan. Morbius has not really interested me much at all. Not that it has to be connected in a universe, but I think the hardest thing is if they're not allowing Spider-Man really to be a part of this universe, because he's going to be a part of the MCU, and I don't know how much he will connect. I don't really care for all these other characters. Because I'm really off the anti-hero bandwagon at the moment because at one point Venom's going to have to be a bad guy.
Yeah.
Like against Spider-Man. I don't mind it, but I always feel like then we're just going to have Venom fight another Venom. I guess that's the idea of it. Like that's the idea of the story. But it just doesn't really get me. Like I would have preferred Spider-Man and Venom fight and then Spider-Man yada yada yada. And then you have like a Venom sequel after that where maybe he's redeemed himself or some shit. I don't know.
Yeah, I do see a redemption arc somewhere there if he does, ever turn and they do bring Spider-Man in.
Yeah.
But it would just be, it would be interesting to see how they approach it, because they are these bad guys.
Yeah.
But I guess if you do put Spider-Man against them, you will, for the first time, ever, you will feel quite, empathetic towards the villain as well. So it might be interesting.
It will be an interesting dynamic, but I would have to say right now, probably one of the worst cinematic universes names out there. We could do a ranking episode. We could do a ranking of our favorite cinematic universes names.
That wouldn't take very long if we can guess that before we start.
That'd be a very short episode. Oh, I just went out of frame there. Okay, Mace, moving on to today's main topic. And I think a very interesting one because we're pushing in a direction with video game adaptations of movies. And really, it's been said for a number of years now that none of them are good. I think that's the simple way of saying it. And over the last couple of years, some have become better and are getting positive ratings. Now, I'm not a massive fan of just going off, say, a Rotten Tomatoes ranking to say if this is good or not, because I still have a firm belief that you can enjoy a movie and that can be enough. Like, it doesn't have to be a great cinematic
Sure.
masterpiece to, especially a video game movie, to be counted as, like, it doesn't need to be an Oscar winner. I just want to have a good time at the movies, and some of these have 100% not been a good time at the movies. So
Yeah, agreed.
I don't know if we can do just a simple list, or maybe we can give our top threes that we've enjoyed the most. But off the top of your head, Mace, what makes a good video game movie or adaptation into film? And this doesn't have to just be film; this can be television also.
Well, like you said, I think over the years, it's been called the video game curse,
Yeah.
or the video game movie curse, where a video game based off a movie or a movie based off a video game has been below par, below average, if not outright horrible. And I think that is as well, just because early 90s, the video game culture is not what it is today. So 30, 40 years back, if they
Yeah.
saw a relatively hot video game like Mario Brothers, for example, they didn't think it had the audience that it did. So they put in a very little budget, or they changed it around enough not to cater for fans, but more of a mainstream audience.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, it faltered. A lot of them did falter throughout the 90s, early 90s. But at its core, though, I think if you're talking about video game movies, I think they're guilty. I see them as guilty pleasures.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them are so bad that the dialogue and all that is almost laughable, but they're just fun to watch. It's a fun 90 minutes just because, you can have a bit of a giggle at the dialogue and just watch some almost cringy action scenes. But at the end of the day, you're like, that wasn't too bad. It was it was a bad movie, but I had a good time.
Do you? I think some of the dialogue, because it comes straight from the video game, can sometimes be a bit weird because it's not really how people speak, but they sort of chuck it in a video game, and it's a mystical world, or it's a completely different universe than obviously what we're normally used to. So they sort of change the dialogue and try and shoehorn it into the movie, and it doesn't 100% make sense. But the one thing, since we both actually watched Prince of Persia last night, I thought that was a very good adaptation of a video game movie from that time. So 2010, I'm pretty sure that came out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
about
2010.
that. Yeah.
So again, a game that I've played minimal, but I do know. I sort of liked the first thing I wrote, just did my classic notes on the movie, because I think it really does show off what a video game movie is about. Is I think a lot of these suffer from we have a lot of lore that has happened over years of games and years of storytelling that we want to shoehorn into a 90 to 120-minute movie.
Mm.
So they throw exposition and do the old tell at the start of a movie. So the start of Prince of Persia, it's like, oh, we're going to go into the mystical lands of yada, 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 that first 3 or 4 minutes.
Yes, yeah, I know.
When I watched that, the first thing I was like last night was just show us, don't tell us. So
Mm.
movie could have completely started with him just being picked up as a boy from that, and the king picks him and takes him. We don't need all this lore to be thrown into our face straight away. And I think we could have learnt about that as the movie goes on. And I think Warcraft also goes through a similar sort of problem, is we're trying to shoehorn everyone into this world straight away, when just show us the world and let us have that connection with it to then push forward in the story. And then if you want to start adding in elements of the lore and everything, sort of do that as the movie goes. But I think there's so much information they're trying to get into these 90 minutes or 2 hours that I think they miss the point sometimes of what it is. And you don't have to tell us everything. And that's also so much information for us as the viewer to comprehend very quickly if we're not a part of said lore through many games.
And
And
that's, once again, I think, that's the film industry trying to cater for the audience, and not in your more general audiences than the fans are, fans themselves. Because the fans know what's going on.
Yeah.
But they know, they're not going to make the box office numbers from fans.
No.
They need to make this a mass appeal film.
I think it makes people feel, I don't know, I think it's lazy story writing too, because you can actually give us this information through scenes and put our characters in certain moments to divulge what's going on, instead of just going, here's 4 minutes of exposition, so now everyone's caught up. You could probably still do that in the first 10 minutes of the movie. Pardon me. But you don't need to make us feel dumb a little bit, if that makes sense. Even the general viewer. So I think that's a classic video game movie trope, though. Is I don't think these would spend a lot of time also in the writer's room. It's probably a couple of people, they write the script, it maybe gets a once over, and then it just sort of gets pushed through. Where
Yeah,
I
agree.
don't
Mm.
see loads of time reworking dialogue and reworking scenes. It's like, okay, boom, 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 boom. And there was moments in this one, and this is just sort of because it's fresh in my mind, and it
Yeah,
reminds
we'll
me a
start.
lot
We'll start with Prince of Persia.
Persia.
Yeah.
And I think it really does show they've got better in the last 10 years. And I think they were
Mm.
really hoping this was some big, big movie because I don't know how much did it make? Um, like it didn't do amazing, I don't, from my
No,
understanding.
no, 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 I didn't.
But what
No.
was the budget of this? Because if it was a big budget, I'm going to be quite annoyed. Uh,
But no, no, I agree. I mean, they do have, for anyone who wasn't familiar with it, they threw in Jake Gyllenhaal
yeah,
as well as it Gemma Artion or however you pronounce her name, and
Ben
they're
Kingsley.
the yeah, Ben Kingsley. They
Yeah,
did throw in some A-list stars, to
yeah,
bring that audience to the cinema, and I like Gyllenhaal's
yeah.
portrayal as well. He's kind of quite smooth and charming. But how'd it go? How'd it go at the box office?
So it cost 150 mil to make and made 330. So just
Oh,
comes out
right.
even. But yeah, for me, it was just, it showed a lot of things regarding the industry, what was the problem at this time. And I think that's where
Mm,
they've sort of tried to, they have got better at in the last couple of years. And this is why I did enjoy the movie and it was a good time. But was it a good movie? I don't think so. And
mm.
it's like we're going off. It did remind me though of classic video game moments where we're just at a scene and we're like walking along and out of nowhere a bad guy appears. And it's
Yeah, yeah,
like,
they did have a lot. Mm,
but that is a video game thing though. That is a thing that
mm.
happens in video games. You're walking along as a character and out of nowhere all these bad guys come. So I can kind of get that if they're trying to connect that with sort of the video game audiences, he has to defeat heaps of bad guys. And really the main guy shouldn't be able to beat 50 of these people because we've never really been shown, besides this guy's a good jumper that we see in those opening scenes.
Yeah.
He's not, we don't know he's a good fighter. And that would have where I would
Mm.
have probably liked something in a
A
scene
training
earlier.
montage
Yeah,
or mm,
not even just a montage, but maybe we see the character when we meet him at some point and he's doing some form of fighting, just to so that we can then go, oh, okay, he's also a skilled fighter. Whereas we sort of just get thrown in. I think more to that point when they then go off to the battle or whatever. So I might have contradicted myself a little there, but I think that was just sort of I didn't mind it, but that movie showed me a lot of things that are problem with the industry, and it was at that point. Um, and we didn't really have a feel for who the characters were. That's
no,
my
no,
understanding. And then, but you knew it's like, well, Ben Kingsley either has to be the good guy or the bad guy because he's the only really named actor from that
named character.
family.
Yeah,
From there, so
yes.
you see, it's like either Ben Kingsley's the good guy or the bad guy. So
Mm.
pretty quickly, I'm like, well, get the king can't be the bad guy. And I was only thinking Toby Kebbell. So Toby Kebbell has been in a bit of stuff. Um, Good actor, but always sort of plays that side character in a way. And I'm like, well, maybe he's a bad guy, and then he just sort of continues on into not much as that movie goes. But what's your thoughts, Jack, on the fact that majority of these movies always have to have that big end set piece where it's that over the top CGI battle? What I'm guessing the majority of the games have anyway.
Yeah, well, with Prince of Persia, I also thought, Disney
Yeah,
kind of, it being a Disney film, held it back a little bit
yeah,
because I'm not sure. Watching it last night, they throwing all these swords and slashes, but you never actually see the swords hit anyone.
no,
You see them, throwing the swords back, and then it cuts, and you miss the sword hit. And action sequences, it's lots of quick cuts and slow motion to hide any potential violence,
yeah,
and it kind of makes the stunts look disjointed.
yeah,
So like he's throwing a knife and then it cuts again and he's almost doing a backflip.
yeah,
And it's like, well, they obviously didn't do this in one scene,
no,
just to. So I think that kind of ruined it. If it was a bit more violent and took itself a bit more seriously,
yeah,
I think, it might have been a slightly better film. But just, and at the end as well, it kind of falls into, like you said, the general trope of a big battle. They've got is it the Sands of Time knife? They're digging it into the big crystal, to
yeah,
go back time. I like anything with time travel. So
yeah,
I quite like this, and how Jake Gyllenhaal goes back in time, to
yeah.
stop spoilers,
Yeah.
yeah, turned off now. Kingsley from kind of taking over, becoming king. Yeah, no, I thought it was quite good, and I thought, as a movie game, video game time, I thought it was very middle of the range.
Yeah.
But I grew up with this movie, so I'm a bit nostalgic,
Yeah.
towards it. Mm.
I think it hits where it was at the time in 2010. So like you said, it's a Disney
Mm.
movie, so they're going to pull back on a lot of things. Whereas this may be another studio and they quite go in the gore and the action and you could really push a character. Whereas I think they're still trying to, as the whole point of it was, we're trying to get kids probably in the school holidays to go and watch this 1, 2, 3 times and really
Mm.
enjoy the action and the set pieces. And I just thought the action was pulled back because it's a Disney movie, like you said, and it's over edited. So I sort of just lost, but it's also 2010, so it doesn't hold up in the way that action can be done also today. So, what's the next one that you want to have sort of a little chat about and sort of the connection of time?
Well, I think it's just going back to the early 90s
Yeah,
and kind of looking at those early films, with, there's a few in the early 90s, more specifically Mario Brothers. Have you
yeah.
ever seen that movie?
I think I've seen it well. I think it's one of those ones where it's like I've seen it well back in the day,
Oh,
like,
okay. Yeah.
but I could not say. And this is where this whole topic sort of connects with 40 to 50 movies. So if you've seen, what's your favorite 3 video game movies, guys, make sure you comment. We've got a couple of posts on our Instagram. So put them there and we can have a little discuss and a debate also. But there's so many to cover in here. And I think Mario Brothers is one of those first ones really connected, like you said, to a property very popular at that time.
Mm.
So yeah, I
But yeah.
could not really talk too much about that one, but yeah.
But yeah, I think, that was the start. It went off a budget of about 40 million
Yeah.
and only made half of that back during its run.
Yeah.
And I think what they learnt from this movie is that if you've seen it, none of the actors cared for the content. You could tell everyone who created the story didn't really play any of the
Yeah.
games. Bob
No.
Hoskins, you can tell he was Mario in the movie, and you had Dennis Hopper as President Cooper, who was essentially meant to be Bowser, but he was a
Yeah.
human.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just didn't follow any of the content. So when fans saw it, they were like, "What is this?" The world was like a post-apocalyptic cyberpunk world, and this is Mario Brothers. You got the Mushroom King. People were expecting, blue skies and green grass. And instead, they got this really like this almost underground society
Yeah.
with nothing to do with it. And I'm not sure if you've seen Yoshi in this movie, but look it up later,
Yeah.
and you just cringe. Yeah, I think this is the start of the video game films at their worst, I think.
Oh yeah, because I think you highlighted this earlier. Oh wow, have I just seen it? You, yeah, wow. Is that just a dinosaur?
Yeah, essentially, it's just like a mini dinosaur.
God blimey. I think this is, like you said earlier, is the studios did not trust at many moments that the actual fan base of these, or I think this also connects to what comic book movies were like in the early or the late 90s, early noughties, is we don't trust the fact that we have to make these like the comics or like the
Hmm.
video games. So we're going to have to modernize these for the general public to enjoy and maybe take away what actually makes these characters great. And that's what I
Yeah.
struggle with, because even looking at this now, I go, and I know people have spoken about Mario Brothers for a very long time, but no wonder the things that make a character and these characters great is automatically ripped from the project. So there's no way that I think majority of people can really get around something like that, and I feel that sucks. Like, and
Yeah.
it's not what we want at all. So
No,
it,
no, it's very unfortunate.
so I think if we go through sort of time and a rough sort of timeline. So
Mm.
now, what's one that sticks out to you in the sort of noughties?
Well, I think it's worth just mentioning, just going back to one more 90s film, because you had Street Fighter,
Yeah,
you had a couple others. Mortal Kombat
yeah,
was, I think, what in 1995. That was I think, one of the ones that did cater for fans. It didn't
97.
perform well at the box office.
No,
This is 95 on
oh, 95.
97's Annihilation.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, that's fine. But yeah, no, the fight sequences were, not too bad. I think this is your perfect guilty pleasure film. It catered for fans. Incorporate all the characters from the Mortal Kombat 1 and 2.
Yeah.
As a general audience, you probably wouldn't be a fan, and
Yeah.
hence, the box office numbers. But I think for video game, fanatics during the early 90s, if you saw this film for the first time,
Yeah.
it's got all the characters, it's got all, some definite 90s actors at the
Yeah.
time that you haven't really seen since the film. And, I enjoyed it in a bad way,
Yeah.
because the dialogue's cringy. The action sequences are, for the time, not too bad. And the CGI is possibly the worst CGI I've ever seen in a
Yeah.
film, especially the sequel.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that was the first coming after the Mario Brothers and, Street Fighter, a few of those other ones. I think it was the first one that gave a good indication that video game movies can go in an all right direction.
Okay. Interesting.
Mm.
I think that's one that I reckon I probably may have not actually seen in
Yeah,
time.
just watch it on a lazy Sunday,
Yeah.
while on your phone.
While on my phone and doing a lot of other things.
Yeah.
So I think we then push into sort of like the noughties. And as I'm just scrolling my list here, this is when the first are obviously Lara Croft's Tomb Raiders come out. And
Yeah.
I think these are, for me, the Lara Croft movies remind me of, here in Australia, Channel 10, Friday night, 8:30, or like 9:30. The footy's finished. Now we just got to chuck on a movie that we just continue to sort of pay the rights for. And the movie takes forever to finish. It's like 12 o'clock. And you just sort of, you watch it and you start watching little bits and then you fall asleep. But that's what reminds me of sort of before streaming, like, oh, we haven't gone to get a DVD this week. I'm going to watch Lara Croft because it's on Channel 10. They're not good, are they?
No. Well, actually, in 2001, Tomb Raider's defense, I believe it was 2001, was it?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, with Angelina Jolie. I actually didn't mind the first film. I remember going to see it with my dad, and it was one of the first movies we saw together.
Yeah.
And as a 8-year-old, I thought it was pretty cool. She's fighting this massive robot at the beginning.
Yeah.
You have some supernatural elements. I'm not sure how much you remember, but she's fighting all these rock monsters in the cave as she's trying to find the two halves of this triangle that connects her with her father at the end. No, I actually quite liked it. It's kind of like a race against time as she's trying to compete with the bad guy to find this artifact. I thought it was actually not too bad, if not one of my favorite video game movies out of everything we're going to discuss today.
Yeah. I don't, from what I remember, it's the classic amount of that time though. So if we even talked, as we say, Prince of Persia is 2010, this movie is very early noughties to me. Like generic,
it's a period piece.
Oh yeah. I don't know how well it holds up, but this is like Angelina Jolie is perfectly cast at this point. And you've shoehorned her in, because what was she doing around the time then? Like, because how old would have she been? Should have been 30, maybe?
Yeah, 30s, I would say, early 30s.
Far out. No. Do you know how
early 20s.
How old do you reckon Angelina Jolie is now?
Okay. 53.
Highest of that, yeah. Okay. Would you believe that she is 44?
Wow.
She was born in 1975. 44.
Wow.
Far out.
Okay.
See, I was thinking, and that's not to her. I just think she's been around for forever. So,
yeah. Same.
So at that point, when this movie's out, she's probably filming when she's early 20s to 20s. So straight away, I'm like, okay. But no wonder, obviously, her dad's John Voight. So
yeah, and see, he plays her father in that movie. So, the connection's all there. It's a family film.
The chemistry.
The chemistry's there for sure.
Oh, I didn't know she married Johnny Lee Miller. I don't know if you know who that is.
No, I can't say I do. I only know kind of the Brad Pitt blow up. I don't know much about her lovers before.
And I'm just trying to. The guy looks so familiar, but I don't know what he's really been in. Okay, that's for another day.
Another podcast. Another podcast.
Yeah, that movie is 100% Angelina Jolie at that time and nails 2000 to 2003 with obviously Cradle of Life. I
did watch the other night too.
How did you find that on rewatch?
On rewatch, I still like the first one a lot better.
Yeah.
This one throws in Gerald Butler, as a sidekick. And I don't think there's an action scene. Have you seen it?
I've seen these both, but I have not watched these for 10 years.
There's the action scene where, they're on the paragliders, they're gliding through Hong Kong.
Yeah.
That's a highlight. And I think the end gets a bit too CGI.
Yeah.
As they go, searching for Pandora's box. So I don't think it hits all the right notes as the first one did. And I don't think it performed as well or critically either.
No, it did not.
No. So I think the first one's just a bit more lighthearted, a bit more fun, whereas the second one gets a bit darker, and I just don't think the story's there for the second. I think it had all the right setup. It just didn't land for me. But no, those, as video game movies go, the early 2000s with those films, were actually, all right. Yeah.
I think that's where they just hit, and that's what they were looking for at this point of it all. Is that's the type of movie you are getting. I'm even just looking at the poster now, and it's the old Angelina Jolie looking off into the distance with some sort of the characters and set pieces of the movie in the background, and a big logo across the front. And I'm like, oh, that's that. At that time, you would have rocked up to the cinema and been like, no, because you wouldn't have read the review or you had to check the newspaper or whatever.
No.
And
I saw Angelina Jolie.
Yeah, Angelina Jolie, and you go, well, I'm going to the cinema to see that. So that for me is the generic at that time of life. Now, Resident Evil is another series, and this is what Dad was talking to me about. And I think Resident Evil is also another one of those ones where it's a classic sort of horror channel on a Fox sort of thing, and it just has to keep banging out sequel after sequel after sequel. And you see like Resident Evil 75 now, and you're like, oh, for God's sake, how are they still making these movies? And and I think I spoke to Dad more about this because he's a big player of the Resident Evil series. So shout out to Dino. I'm not a massive Resident Evil player, but Dad is. And he just goes, they don't take too much of tell me if I'm wrong here, too much of the video game into it. I think the first one has a little bit apparently, but then the rest of it sort of the stories diverge off. So the film series is more of its own thing. Is that correct?
Yes. So there's 6 films all up. So the first one, 2002, did pull most from the games.
Yeah.
Because, it starts with the Umbrella Corp and the T-virus leaking, which causes the zombie outbreak. I think as they progress, the only thing they kind of relate back apart from, zombies is more so characters. Like they throw in Leon and a couple of other characters across the movies. They die pretty much instantaneously. So they're only in there for that brief connection back to the games. But Mila Jovovich, how do you pronounce her name actually? Some of these actresses.
Mila Jovovich.
There you go. But no, because she's married to the director Paul W.S. Anderson, who also did Mortal Kombat, and he's doing Monster Hunter. So he's like the video game guy. If you want a movie adaptation, you go to him. But
and he nails it.
he's on top of it. It was probably like because they ended up going, they're married now. Yeah. So it's almost turned into a wife and husband project, these Resident Evil films, the later part. But first one was really good. I'm not sure, I would actually recommend the first one to you. Yeah. And there's a cool laser beam section she's, dodging through. But the others, I think they falter a little bit under their own weight. And I think choreographic fight scenes slowly go downhill as they progress. It's essentially the same movie in a different location from 2 to 6. Yeah.
And do you feel like they're stopping now, or is there another one coming? Or to say the last one is the final chapter, but whenever that's in a film's name, I feel like it's never the final chapter.
That came out in was it 2015? 2017. Oh, crikey, yeah, it feels longer. That I can say that definitely was the final chapter.
Yeah.
They kind of summed that up pretty well. But now Mila and her husband Paul are working on Monster Hunter, which is another pretty well-known Japanese RPG. So, they might expand that into another 6 really interesting films. So they've got their work lined up. Mm.
Yeah, they do. Classic, just find stuff that no one else has wanted to touch for a while. And we'll make movies out of it. So now I think video game movies then don't get touched for really a while. After Sands of Time in 2010, people sort of see it as no one really wants to touch this stuff. Uncharted sort of slowly starts, people saying there should be a movie about that, and that takes... When was the first Uncharted out? That would have been like 2009, wasn't it? Movie?
2007, yeah.
Yeah, so from that time, good you're on top of those dates, Mace. Yeah, 2007, correct. I reckon ever since that, people were talking about Uncharted, but no one wanted to touch that for a bit of time, and went through a bit of development hell. And I think majority of these video game movies The bigger ones, people stay off from. It's comic book movies that people are interested in.
Mm.
These projects aren't bringing people to the box office. So we then see what I actually don't mind
Was
at
it
all.
Hitman? Because I
No,
enjoyed Hitman. Oh,
no,
okay.
I wasn't talking Hitman, but Hitman also reminds me of the. Uh, it reminds me of going to the video store and looking at it and being like, should I? And then it reminds me like 2 years later, you're still going, should I get that in my weekly? Am I going to watch it? No. But you want to have a quick chat about Hitman before I move on?
Oh no, yeah, it's just another,
Yeah.
one back in, I think it was 2007 as well, the same year you're talking about
Yeah.
now. But yeah, no, Timothy Olyphant, he was quite big at the time. He did Die Hard, that same year, Die Hard 4. No, I grew up with the Hitman games as well. So his portrayal isn't, amazing. But as an action film, I didn't mind it. Some of the action scenes, there's one where he's gunning through a drug dealer's house. And no, I thought the story approach they took with it, it was kind of told, the start was really the end. And he was kind of telling through the story of how the cop chasing down Agent 47 ended up. I thought it was quite good. Like if anyone's listening to this podcast today and thinks, what are some more video game movies out of all this, 40, whatnot? I would recommend Hitman. Not the sequel, Agent 47, not really a sequel, but this one, 2007 one, was actually not too bad.
Yeah. Where were we? I think that's the hardest thing for those games too, because they're sort of just based off the fact of mercilessly killing a lot of people, and the game doesn't always have a lot of story itself. Like, I know that there is obviously a plot to go through, but it's not the best storytelling. So then you try and bring it into a film that's about story, and sometimes it doesn't always hit, and then they have to just try and push the excessive violence, and then it's sort of, whether you like that or not, can sort of push you out of the film a little bit. So what now brings me to 2016 is two movies that I think are worlds apart, but also very close together. In Assassin's Creed,
yes,
and I actually don't mind, and I feel like they stuffed up a little bit, and I've missed one here, what we'll talk about after, and Warcraft. Where do these sit for you, Mace?
Well, I'll start with Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
So Assassin's Creed, as people know, did actually stem from a Prince of Persia game.
Yeah.
And then it turned into its own thing. Assassin's Creed, being a massive fan, I think similar to the games, I'm not sure how recently you watched it, but Assassin's Creed universe is essentially someone going in, a modern day person going in, accessing their genetic memories and taking them to a past ancestor. And I think similar to the games, people don't like the combination between going back and forth between modern day and that, historic ancestor. And the movie did that exact same thing. And I think just from the flow of the film, going back between Michael Fassbender's, present day person and who's he play? What's his character called in Assassin's Creed? It's Atia or
Adventures of his ancestor.
Aguilar. Yeah, something like that. And I just think it doesn't flow very well, and I think the modern day sequences are quite boring, to be honest. And I think the Spanish Inquisition's a really good place for your history to get set, but I don't think the film had a good enough, stronger story to make it actually worthwhile and interesting. Some fight scenes are great, don't get me wrong, but otherwise I thought it was quite blank and boring.
Yeah, I had to find that one of the more boring movies I've really ever watched, like in that sort of time when I was something that I was kind of excited for. And I'm not a big player of the game, but I have played them. It's just not my favorite. But the director here, actually, the director Jack went to our school?
No, really? Oh, I shouldn't be really proud of that, but who was it?
Justin Cazelle. He was born in Gula.
Really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, didn't you know that?
Really?
He did Snowtown.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's news. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then The Turning, and then Macbeth, where he obviously connected with Fassbender and stuff to then get them to do Assassin's Creed. So, so I thought I knew, because this is Ellis's favorite director, just because of Snowtown. But I'm like, he was at Pembroke. So surprised he's not there for any of the little Year 12 film projects.
Yeah.
They don't bring
him
in.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm
So
glad we've got.
just just a little bit of a connection there. But no, so for Assassin's Creed, that whole thing sort of I can't remember as much on the games anyway, but I don't think
Mm,
they nailed what people were wanting to see. Like you said before, the moments in present day were quite boring,
mm.
and not something that I wanted to see as much of. So if you're
No,
going to, you could nearly start and end the movie in those situations, but they're sort of pushing too much of that, I thought. And yeah, it just wasn't a massive fan of this one. It bored me a little
no.
bit. So
Yeah, they need to lay off the modern day scenes,
yeah,
and similar, very much problems with the game. And I think they just need to find a stronger story
yeah,
because obviously the character that they
yeah.
went to the memories, it's nothing to do with the games,
No,
really.
no,
It's just
no.
a new character altogether. But yeah, no, I just need a stronger story and stronger script. All
Like, could have you had this whole idea? This could have been over a couple of movies and ended that whole sort of story. Could have been a longer arc. Then I feel like they tried to end it. Some elements of it there anyway. So the next one I did want to talk about because it was from the same year, as I
Mm.
said
I
before.
saw this with you, didn't I? Yeah.
Yeah, we did. We saw Warcraft.
Mm.
Now I think this one for me gets a lot of bad rap. Like it's not great at all, but I feel like it comes from the world of we're trying to. Again, my point before is like we're trying to tell you what this is about. When just show us and
Mm.
just give us the characters, put them in the world, and let us watch and let us understand all this for ourselves. Whereas they've got to tell us the lore of the land and all this sort of stuff, and it's got to end with this big over the top battles and I it just sort of like I actually didn't mind the CGI. Like I didn't mind it. Now you sort of feel a little bit off against some of the characters because you don't have that sort of connection sometimes with them. But I didn't think it
Mm.
was that bad. What's your thoughts on this one?
Well, it did underperform, I think, at the box
Massively. Yeah.
office. Yeah, because it did have a huge budget, and I think, if any of these movies we're talking about, I think the CGI and
Yeah.
special effects were incredible, and
Yeah.
you can tell because they put in the budget and
Yeah.
just didn't get a return on it. And because the World of Warcraft universe, in terms of lore, is huge.
Yeah.
Like there are so many fans, so many people play World of Warcraft even to this day, and I think the movie was trying to find a really fine line between kind of keeping it simple as possible.
Yeah.
So they did throw in some original characters, keep, the lore of the war between the
Yeah.
orcs and the humans and all that. But I think it came to a similar problem with Assassin's Creed where, don't get me wrong, it wasn't a bad film. I didn't like some of the actors in it. There was one actor I didn't like in particular. He was the bad warlock
Yeah.
at the end. I do not like him as an actor. I'm sorry.
Which one's
Um,
which one's that? The Warlock.
the
Uh,
blonde guy.
Ben
I don't know
Foster.
his. Yes, am
Yeah.
sorry. I do not like Ben Foster as
So
an
yeah.
actor. It did have some, good talent otherwise, but I don't know. It just fell short. It was trying to bring in the audience, but I think the story hit some points where, as a general audience, I was a bit bored. I'm
Yeah.
not sure about you. I mean, the fight sequences were, amazing and effects were good, but I think there were points where I was like, okay, I kind of just want to, get to the end now.
Yeah.
It's some dialogue choices weren't on spot. I don't know. What did you think? I mean,
So to your point before too, so it only grossed 47 million in the States. What's not a lot on a
mm,
$150 million budget, but overseas it actually was received quite well, just under 400 million, with
okay,
the highest areas. Pardon me, with Asia loving it. So
I
they
can see that. Mm,
so there was talk, and there's still always been talk that a sequel would be made. Obviously, a lot less money, but with it looking at they will make money in Asia. So dropping the box office back, or sorry, dropping the amount of money it cost, the production budget back a little bit, and then hoping that in Asia they could do quite well there. But for this movie, I remember it's just done. It tries to do too much for me with
mm,
again in a runtime of just on 2 hours, like on the dot. And they're looking at making a sequel. I think this is always the hardest thing is I don't like movies that also are planning for sequels
mm,
because you don't deserve a sequel or don't deserve three movies or a trilogy after one
mm.
film. Like you got to make a good film first, or I
You
think
got to earn it.
yeah,
Mm,
you got to earn it. And I think they sort of are always looking in between of we're trying to make a story for now, but we're also trying
mm,
to have a trilogy or a big series here of films. And I think that's the indifference of a studio going, because who produced this studio wise? It was distributed by Universal. So
Mm.
they're looking at this as probably want to be one of their biggest series. They were hoping for close to $1 billion anyway, when you should have just made a good film or tried
Yeah.
to bring in some lore and then push us on in time. And I think the biggest thing with a lot of these video game movies is they don't bring for me a lot of rewatchability factor to
Mm.
it. Like, I don't want to go back and watch this.
No.
Like, I'm happy if we wanted to talk about the whole film and go more in depth, like I'd watch it, but it's not something I'm going to scroll through and go, you know what, I didn't mind it when I watched it, and I'm happy to rewatch it. Whereas now, I'm like, I just really couldn't be bothered. So that's what sort of
Yeah.
annoys me a little bit there about Warcraft. And
Mm.
it's a fine movie though, like it's fine,
Mm.
but it's not hit the levels that I think they wanted with the amount of money they spent and the big set pieces and everything. And that was sort of
No.
at the time, again, we've had Avengers and stuff pulling through, and you're looking at sort of a little bit of ensemble pieces. But I would have
Mm.
nearly liked some characters to be sort of disconnected and then come together in that film. So
Yeah, I appreciate they took the risk though with such a big
yeah,
budget, for a video game film.
yeah,
I thought, it's a good start. Sure, it didn't perform, but I liked, and the sequels, I guess, only set up because there was so much lore. They wanted
no,
to give
that's it.
fans, some hope that's one of their favorite plot lines or quests might come into a, future movie. So they wouldn't at least, give the first one a bit of shit. But no, I like that the studio went all in for it. As a movie, I'm sure I know this film has a lot of fans, a
Yeah,
lot of dedicated people who like
yeah,
it.
yeah.
So
And
I'm glad it's there.
yeah,
Mm.
and maybe one day I will, just when you're bored on a Sunday and it's raining, like I'll chuck it on and give it another watch. But
Mm.
also, I think the next one. So this was in 2014, and one of, and I think
Also
all
going
of
back a
us,
little bit. Yeah.
just going back a little bit. Sorry,
Yeah.
because I missed this one, and obviously we spoke not that long ago regarding Fast and the Furious.
Mm.
So one of my favorite leading actors in Hollywood, who should be getting so many more movies, Aaron Paul. Uh, I can't
Bitch.
do that with a straight face, because he's just, Aaron Paul is not a movie star like
Mm.
at top level, and we're saying that behind a webcam. So Aaron, if you're watching, sorry. I
Yeah,
think you
we
are a
still love
deep,
your performance in
yes,
Breaking Bad,
great,
Aaron.
yeah. I think you are a really good actor, an actor. This is not
Mm.
acting. This is a action movie franchise that you're trying to get thrown in, because, so again, we just literally spoke about these not that long ago. But
I mean, have we mentioned the film yet?
no, not really. I didn't like the film at all. I think it's stupid because it's
So
just
this
trying
is
to,
Need for Speed,
Need for
2014.
Speed. Sorry, yes, sorry, Need for Speed.
Yeah.
So at 2014, that was after Fast Five, and so this Fast Six was out the year before. So if you're going to
Mm.
rank off movies, that this is literally just a rip off of the Fast and the Furious franchise, but they're going back basically, I feel, to 2001. So
Yeah.
they're trying to start their lore, but it just doesn't do anything for me. And then you got like Dominic Cooper in there, and I'm just like, oh, okay. I do like Imogen Poots though. She's
Mm. Yeah, I do too. I do too.
she's good.
Um, she's the French girl, isn't she?
Yeah.
She kind of appears French. But I think it was kind of going off the hype of Fast and Furious. The
Yeah.
set pieces are very similar,
Yeah.
but going off a video game franchise with little to no story to start with. It's a car racing game,
Yeah.
and they're trying to make sure the later ones do have some story. But back in 2014, I'm pretty sure the previous ones never enough of a story to build a movie
No.
and characters off.
And I think that's what kills me with it, because I just go, it's a racing friend. It's like someone going and creating FIFA. Like
Yeah, FIFA movie. Yeah.
FIFA the movie. Okay, well, are we just having heaps of set pieces that are playing football? Or are we like
Mm.
really trying to care about these characters, professional footballers? Like, so I go, Need for
Yeah.
Speed is just car racing around
Mm.
a story. And I feel like sometimes I'd love to be a writer in these movies, because I feel like you'd sit there and go, oh, we need a Need for Speed movie. And then people are sitting there going, like, what's the character's name again? What is he called?
Oh yeah, you got me. But it's car racing around a revenge plot,
Yeah,
because he gets sent to prison after,
yeah,
some car crimes by his mate, and then the rest of the film is him trying to get back at him
yeah,
through, some car races thrown in between. And I think there's a, Fast and Furious moment where he drives off a canyon and
yeah.
is caught by the helicopter and gets dragged across the canyon by a string. So it's pretty outrageous.
I think my favorite thing always is like when you can't remember characters' names at all. But I don't know if these characters are like at all parts. Obviously, it's just a car racing game. So they're sitting in a boardroom and they're going, let's call our character Toby Marshall. Like, and
What's your
then,
son's name? Toby. Okay,
gosh,
we'll
yeah,
write that down.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So then you've got here, I think that's Kid Cudi's character. Um,
Mm.
yeah, because we've got to throw in a songwriter and producer and everything to try and get the music people. But he's called Benny Maverick Jackson. Now we've got to have like
Yeah.
he's a member of his crew. It's like, oh, for God's sake, like just it's it's just like, oh, okay, and we've got to have a love interest. We've got to have this. It's like, okay, here we
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
But you can see how that movie does not do anything uh, after. Now
No.
we're hitting our hour on the dot, Mace. Close. That's good. So pushing on, where briefly does Rampage sit for you?
Well, we seem to commend The Rock a lot on
Yes.
his efforts in the show, but once again, I did think he turned what could have been an absolute turd into an okay film. The Rampage one, similar to Need for Speed. There's no story. This is an arcade machine,
Yeah.
essentially, and there's where you play as a couple of monsters, giant gorilla,
Yeah.
and I think what was the other monster? Oh, it's just the alligator,
Yeah.
and it's essentially just a CGI fight fest with The Rock thrown in between it all. But I thought, because it's The Rock, if you had any other star, if you had like a D-list star, I don't think anyone would have gone to see this for their life.
No.
But you chuck in, is it James Morgan? What's his
Jeffrey
name?
Dean Morgan.
Jeffrey Dean Morgan. He plays somewhat of the antagonist, so to speak. And it's okay. It's an perfectly passable action film.
See, for me, this is what I would call, and we spoke at the top of the show of Extraction. This for me is like a Netflix movie. This is
for sure.
This is what I want to watch, and this is sort of harsh then when we speak about Warcraft, and I never want to do that. But this is the type of movie. It's pouring with rain on a Sunday, and I really can't be bothered doing.
All these
anything.
are Sunday movies.
No, but they are.
Rainy Sunday films.
They're rainy Sunday movies because I know what I'm going to get. And I think this is the hard thing is if this was made for Netflix, I think it gets a lot of views. Like if this was a release on Netflix. Whereas because this is in the cinema, I think people see The Rock. So you get The Rock people will go and watch it. But no one's doing second viewings or no one's really... Some mates will just be like, I'm not going. Like that doesn't interest me at all. But I think, like you said, they're trying to make a movie off an arcade game. And the only reason I want to go see it is I'm just looking here at one still image. And it's just, you could say that The Rock is in about 50 of his films from this image. Like he could just reuse shots. And it's like it's a burning city and he's just running with a big, massive machine gun. And you just go, that's The Rock. He's the only person who can do that, because you can't. What other actor, quickly to divert off, could do that? Do you think?
Oh, I could probably think of a few. Nothing on the top of my head though, but The Rock could definitely be the one in the last.
But
couple
if you
of years,
put Chris Hemsworth into that, I don't think it has the same feel.
No,
even though they're the same type of person, like big over the top action person. Like I think the only person who can do that is The Rock.
Yeah. No, I agree, and it is an odd film to even do, considering it's a 30-year-old game by the time the film comes out that no one really would have played recently.
No.
So it won't appeal to kids, playing video games now. It wouldn't appeal to our generation.
No.
It would appeal to our parents' generation, and even then, that's if they like video games in the arcade.
Yeah.
And on a budget of $140 million, it didn't do actually bad at the box office, but that is a risk.
But so when at that point, I think The Rock, there's a whole episode on The Rock. I know we talk about The Rock a lot on this because he is basically what this sort of like cinema is at the moment. But film career around that time, that's when he was just busting out projects. That's when like Skyscraper, and everyone's like, we don't want a skyscraper. We don't want a skyscraper movie. But he's just busting out all of this sort of stuff. Like, and you go,
it's B stuff, but yeah.
But that's just him. He's making money. Like, that's just setting up the fam for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
So we spoke about probably half an hour ago I'm not having my timing, but we spoke about Tomb Raider, and now we push back into 2018 with who I love, Alicia Vikander, and the Tomb Raider reboot. What is in line and semi based off the reboot of the game, what I think was in 2013.
Yeah, 2013. Yep. Yeah.
Great guess. Great
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. It was 2013. Yeah.
Yeah, very good.
Well
Very
done.
good cuts. Uh,
Yeah.
so,
Well done.
yeah,
Proud of you.
based more off that with going to the island, searching for some amulet. Am I guessing it's an amulet or something?
It's the tomb, isn't it, of the Empress or something?
Yeah, some crap. But I did not mind this movie, but I also it was so actually, you know what? I did like it. I did like the film. And when I watched it, I reckon I watched this last year. And you know what, Jack? I watched it on a rainy Sunday.
There you go. And the sequel's coming out too. So, if you liked it,
Is there
get
actually a
ready for the next
sequel?
one.
When's it? I thought that
Yeah,
was
it
they
was.
weren't doing it.
Oh no, it's been back and forth. I think since this one's been the first one was released, but it was meant to be released next year. But something might happen in the next maybe 2 years. With the virus.
Okay. So do we have a plot of this, the second one? It didn't make much money at the box office, but I did enjoy because he's not even put on the main cast. Nick Frost. Nick Frost is key to this series.
Yeah, as Alan, the pawn shop owner. Huge role.
Yeah, and then you've got the other chick, Alan's wife. That just shows there's not many characters in this film when he's in it for not that long. But I think the only thing that it did annoy me about this was when she gets the two guns.
Oh, at the very end.
The very end. I'm like, oh, for God's sake. Like, here we go.
Yeah.
I know they're just trying
back a bit an Easter egg.
Yeah, exactly. So production was delayed this summer with filming now taking place in England and South Africa due to the coronavirus pandemic. Sadly, was only nominated for Action Movie at the Teen Choice Awards and did not win. Sadly.
But no, I mean, as a film, the action wasn't as crazy or over the top as the Angelina Jolie versions in the early 2000s. Because it was very grounded. Like you said, it was from the 2013 video game, which rebooted the franchise essentially, and this was hoping to reboot the movie franchise.
Yes.
But it did change a little bit. There wasn't any supernatural elements.
No.
Such in this, it hinted at Himiko's power, and it made it seem like there were supernatural elements, which I was quite excited for. But at the end, it was more of a treated as a disease that turned people into weird zombies, which is kind of supernatural, but not as much as the previous installment of the game.
I think when we're looking at a Uncharted movie, is we're wanting sort of that, but better. I think no shit.
Yeah.
But a grounded level. And I think always the hardest problem with a lot of these raiding tombs or finding ancient things is they always have to have some form of, like you said, like a supernatural element to it. But then they stop it and then life goes back to normal. So I didn't mind how this ended. And I quite enjoyed it. And it's an easy rewatch and the action sequences are good. You feel like there are some stakes on the line a little bit. But
and her dad's there, for that emotional,
got to have the dad's dead, alive, all this stuff. That's when, Walter Goggins, isn't it, is the bad guy?
Yes. Walter Goggins,
Yeah, the classic sort of around that time, bad guy.
He's a villain in a lot of things, I'm pretty sure.
He was Ant-Man and the Wasp. He nailed that bad guy.
Yeah.
But so next we move on to what I think is something that was done actually quite well. And for everyone here again, we're pushing on time-wise, just over the hour now. Pokemon Detective Pikachu. Where does this one sit for you? Because in my respect, when I watched this last year, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I actually think this is probably the sign of video game movies getting better and catering for the audience, finding that general niche that also appeals to a larger audience. As you know, Pokemon is the biggest intellectual property, since the late 90s. And they chose the two most iconic characters, to bring people in. Pikachu, older kids, this generation, your generation, my generation, parents, maybe not parents' generation, know Pikachu, and they know Mewtwo, who, is the antagonist of this film. They're the two central Pokemon, and it bases that film around those two.
Yeah.
And the special effects, are quite, they're dedicated to the
Yeah.
games. That, if Pikachu was in real life, I would assume Pikachu would look like something like
Yeah.
this in the movie. They didn't do some weird, like Ninja Turtles. Looks
No.
nothing like the source material, but all the Pokemon look how you would imagine them. They're not too scary, I think going off Detective Pikachu, which is one of the side spin-off games,
Yeah.
it's not part of the main RPG series, was an interesting decision, but I think overall it worked. And Ryan Reynolds' voice, well, it was a bit weird when I first heard it.
Yeah.
It actually, it kind of came to me as the movie went. I'm like, you know what? It's not too bad.
I can run with it. And I think that's the thing for me is I just go, yeah, I enjoyed that. And I think, like you said, there's elements of, they create a world, what I feel is I could live in, and it feels like that's what Pokemon are a part of, walking around every day.
Yeah.
And I think they show that very well at the start of the film. And they don't, I probably need to rewatch that again. It might be 100%
No, they do.
right.
They do.
But they show it to us. They don't tell us. It's like, we're going to show you this is the world. And you believe it pretty quickly, I think. And again, there's elements of that's the only Pokemon talking, really, etc. But all the other Pokemon feel real to me. And even like Charizard, when he sort of comes in, I'm pretty sure I'll get the names wrong, but sort of the way the characters, it feels like a world where I could see other characters and other stories from that world, and I would be very content with it.
Yeah. From a quality perspective, I think this is maybe number one in
Yeah.
terms of video game movies. This is how it should be done, I think, as an
Yeah.
example for old films going forward. I think, Pokemon franchise also has, that backing as well. But no, sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say it's something that I would 100% be happy to see another one. Like if they said even if it wasn't another Detective Pikachu, because I'm guessing that story really can't continue as much. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not up with the lore as much, but I would like to continue seeing these films or seeing this world. And if they then, what I would be fine with is just calling. I was thinking maybe the Pokemon universe of Pokemon characters. But I would be happy if they just went, and this is in another part of the world, we're doing this now. And then we go with Ash or whatever it is. Like if you do something like that, or you create your own characters, or you continue with this Justice Smith character in Tim Goodman, a great name. But I really enjoyed it. And it's something that has a bit of rewatchability. And the end is I think fine.
It's a good spin, I thought.
Yeah, there's a good battle at the end, or battle of what you sort of have in these films, because it's still a kids movie. So, but I really enjoyed my time with it. I didn't see it in cinema, but how much did it make in the box office? Did it do well?
It did, quite well. It made $433 million on a 150 budget.
Okay, so yeah, you're making a bit of cash there. And it's good enough for the studio. So we now move on, Mace, to. Have you seen this yet? Because I have not. And
which one?
Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yes, I have. Yeah. And I think what makes Sonic the Hedgehog work, as well as some other video game movies, it makes homage to, the gamers who did play it through the early 90s and my generation. And, Sonic's still around for kids, today. So kids can still, would love to see, Sonic the Hedgehog movie. So it gets, 30 years next year. So it gets 3 generations of people going along. James Marsden stars Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
And they all play their retrospective roles. I'm not sure what you think of Marsden, but he plays very similar role to that Bunny Hop movie. Plays the generic guy who encounters a really, supernatural being, and it's just that everyday guy who just banters off, the animated character.
I haven't seen it yet. So that came out in Australia early Feb.
It's on digital now.
It is on digital now. Okay.
It is, straight to, because of the virus.
Yes,
It still made the numbers because it was out for a couple of weeks at the cinemas and did very well. But because of the virus, it's now gone straight to digital.
Yeah, so it made a profit. It made a very sizable profit. And I think in the end, that's why the budget is a little bit iffy with the development. And that's a whole other story that everyone's heard before regarding the looks and the visual effects changing and stuff. But I have to give kudos to the studio for changing the look after everyone thought he looked weird. Better. Yeah, so
I think his design's a lot better.
Yeah, they sort of. I give them credit for changing it in a way too. Like I don't think it's bad
Mm.
because they were maybe
And
going that realistic or not realistic route. But then once everyone said no, that looks weird, they changed it and it went well. Like,
yeah, and it's a fine line. I think they find, you know, kids love it, but also
mm,
me being a Sonic fan as well, growing up with, you know, Sonic Hedgehog and Adventure and
mm,
all those games. I think that, you know, it pays, you know, there's a few Easter eggs in there. You know, Tails, the fox shows up at the end, setting up a sequel.
yeah,
And then you know, got the Green Hill zone music that
yeah,
plays just subtly in the background. So you know, it has a few throwbacks, and Jim Carrey
yeah,
is his former self of the 90s, you know, goofy,
yeah,
even though Robotnik's meant to be, you know, a bit more of a downgraded character, but he plays with the character, and it's quite entertaining. I would probably say give it a watch, yeah,
yeah. I,
when
I
you
think
after this podcast.
when
Mm,
I saw the first trailer, and this I will give it a watch in the next couple of days.
mm,
He, I saw Jim Carrey, and I was like, oh, for God's sakes, Jim Carrey in this type of role. But everything I've read about it, and to your point too, is I think he sort of nails it and leans into the character and does very well. And I think that's the type of characters that Jim Carrey can play still.
mm.
But it's not like it was just the 90s and noughties, and that's the only things he was like funny at that time. So I think, yeah, good on him, and that's probably a wise pick. And where they go from the series, I'm not 100% sure, and whether now it's 2 or 3 years to the next one. But no, I
Well,
think good
yeah,
on him.
I think it's another right step in the direction. I think for the sequel, if you, I know
Mm,
you haven't played the games, but I
mm,
think, you know, Tails is being incorporated.
mm,
They'll bring in Metal Sonic. You know, they'll have, you know, a few of the, you know, standard characters, maybe Knuckles, you know,
yeah.
in the next one.
So as we push on, Mason, have I missed anything? Because I don't want to talk about Angry Birds because even though they are up there in highest rating of these films, but for us they're probably right out of our generational sort of gap. I don't know. Have you seen them?
I've seen bits and pieces of them, being a primary school teacher and all. Yeah, they're
Good
perfectly
work.
fine. The
Good
animations.
good work to justify it, mate.
Yeah, I just watch them by myself. No,
Yeah,
no, they're perfectly fine movies. I mean, it's not to the point of a Pixar film
no,
where the humor or an adult can enjoy them just as much as the children.
no,
It's very child orientated
yeah,
jokes and slapstick. But it's fine. It's fine. I won't go too much into detail about it because they have performed well, and I do believe there will be a third.
yeah,
But if your child's really young, they're great films to pop on. But, you know, once again, Angry Birds, there's no story. It's
no,
fucking, you know, sorry, not fucking, it's flicking birds at, you know, obstacles and trying to knock them down for
yeah,
points. You know, you can only do so much with that IP,
yeah.
but they've done it. Hmm.
They have. And it's just they're just throwing all the different characters, and for me, this is a classic merch uh, story. Anyway, is we sort of aren't making as much money off the games, so we can throw together a movie. Characters are pretty easy. There's no live action in these, is it? It's all just cartoon.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just CGI. Yeah.
So it just ends up being a cartoon, and it's not too bad 3D animation, and
Hmm.
they will just sell toys after toys after toys on top of
Hmm.
it. What
It's
makes
a
them,
powerhouse. They're already selling, I've already seen backpacks and shirts well
yeah,
before the movies. So they're
yeah.
doing well, whoever created
It,
that.
it just keeps it also just keeps that in the limelight of the public too. So it means that now there's more games will be made and there's more of this, and it's the classic school holidays movie
It is.
that when
Yeah,
you
yeah.
when or at the end of term when you take your kids to a movie and boom boom there you go. Is there anything we missed, mate? Mace, or is there? And then we'll move on to my next point of this.
Yeah, well, I know we haven't touched on a lot. We could almost do this over, you know, 3 episodes almost.
Yeah,
But I'll just give honorable mentions to Doom with The
yeah,
Rock, 2005. You know, if you like horror and a bad video game adaptation, you know, that copies more of Doom 3, give
yeah,
that a watch. And Dead or Alive, which is another fighting one,
yeah,
which I grew up, you know, adolescent Jack, you know, it's
yeah,
girls in bikinis fighting each other and playing volleyball,
yeah,
very basic plot. You know, they were brought to this
yeah,
island to fight, and you know things unwind towards the
yeah,
end. But another good one on your Sunday for a bit of a laugh and
yeah.
some really cringy choreographed fight scenes.
So as we slide on to the next point is the future of this industry.
Hmm.
What is key for you to keep these movies going, and what's important? for it, and what then we'll go on to what ones we want to see soon.
Well, I think, learning coming off Detective Pikachu and Sonic,
Yeah,
I think, at its core, yes, they're kids' franchise and kids' films. But I think if they find a film, if they put the budget in, I think that's really important.
yeah,
I think a movie like this, all video games are either fantasy or make believe.
yeah,
So they need the budget to make up these characters. Otherwise, it's going to turn out to be very similar to the 90s films. So
yeah,
you need a budget, I think, is the first thing.
yeah,
Second thing, I think, you need to cater for your fans. So you need to throw in a few Easter eggs, but at the same time, you need to introduce audiences to the characters. Keep it simple. Like Pokemon movie just introduced Pikachu more or less.
yeah,
Sonic just had Sonic and Robotnik. Keep it simple to the main characters from the first game. And, maybe throw in, maybe an A-list actor. You might
yeah,
not need them depending on the franchise, but it is that draw card. So budget, draw card, keep it simple. And I think also just do have a good story as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
I just second all your points there. I think you nailed it 100%. And when you said story at the end was, for me, I think for all movies, video games are, especially movies, you look at a video game and you see some of them have anywhere upwards of 30 to 40 hours of story
Mm.
to play through. I'm quite slow in some games, but you've got 2 hours to tell a collective story, a narrative of start and a middle and end. So that is difficult to do. So make sure you have a concise story. Pardon me. Don't be afraid, like you said, to bring in elements of lore, but show us and don't just throw it down our throats at the start of the movie.
Mm. Yeah.
And
Okay.
don't add too much though, that it's so hard for us to remember. And there's only so many random amulets or so many random knives or certain things that we can remember. So keep it simple and nail the first one using
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
budget and your bankable actor, etc., to propel hopefully people to come and see a second and a third and then build. So probably
Yeah.
spend 2 or 3 more rewrites in a writer's room just to make sure that the story makes some form of sense. Now the
Mm.
dialogue can be a little iffy, but make sure the story feels so coherent and doesn't just chop and change, and maybe keep it to a couple of locations. I think some of these already try and throw way too many locations in and show you too much of the world, whereas nearly keep it a little concise for the first one, and then maybe play around with the next. But don't be afraid to lean into what makes these movies or makes these games their best elements. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
I agree. Yeah, yeah, and don't get too ambitious on a sequel. Maybe
no,
like Sonic did, throw in something in the mid-credit
yeah,
sequence,
yeah.
but don't set anything up in the main
No,
film.
no. Keep the film as it is.
Yeah,
So
no.
the next thing I just wanted to quickly touch on, because this one again, like we say, we could talk for hours on these, is what video game besides say like an Uncharted or something. What's something that's really interesting you and you want to come soon?
Yeah, so as you know, we got Monster Hunter and Uncharted on its way once they. But as a video game franchise that I would like to be seeing remade, well, there is a Halo television
Yeah,
series in the works, and that's another thing I think as well for video game movies. Maybe not do a movie, do a Witcher, pull
yeah,
a 6-part TV show so you can extend on that lore, extend on the characters. It
yeah,
doesn't always have to be a movie. TV shows, as The Witcher shown, can do very, very well.
yeah,
So I think that might be another undertaking for the future, when they think, let's do a TV show
yeah.
instead. But I think I'd really like to see a Halo series, I think.
Yeah.
In my
I
opinion. Yeah, it
think
would be cool.
Netflixes and the streaming services give that option because you can bring in a high level of production. What previously, and this is a whole another topic too, previously you had to do on, say, a Fox, and where the budget was $1 or $2 or $3 million an episode, whereas now on Netflix you can get upwards of $15 to $20 million an episode to tell a more coherent story, and it can develop characters a little bit more and indulge the lore a little bit.
Mm,
So for me, I think that's a whole different discussion
it
on
is,
video
yeah.
game TV shows and if they should work that way. But I think yeah, Halo would be an interesting one.
And I think one is in the works. One
Yeah,
is, I
no.
think, yeah, something in production is happening. Yeah.
Would I'm just sort of scrolling through some lists of games, Jack. Would a Grand Theft Auto style um, sort of movie work for you, or is that something that's not? G'day, Cass.
I feel like it will be too generic, I think, of a
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
Unless you copy a story straight out from one of the games, I do think
Mhm.
it's just a game with some. It's just a generic movie with some violence
Once,
and
yeah.
some, car thefts. I don't think it's really right for a movie.
No.
It would be too generic. It's too much of a generic game unless you adapt the story from a game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it
Mm.
just turned into, I think, a Need for Speed style thing. We're just getting
Yes.
it's just we're trying to throw a
Mm.
name and we're going to make a movie and it won't nail it. But obviously, Uncharted is something that we're really interested in, and we'll probably speak about that when it gets closer
And
to
Last of Us as
release.
well. We
And
can't forget
Last of
that.
Us,
And
yes.
that's in store.
So they're moving along and what they
Mm.
look like in the future. And I think the hardest thing to do is to cast these films anyway, because people were speaking about Nathan Fillion for Uncharted for a very long time, and just the movie gets in 2007 perfect casting. Now it's
He's on his
2020,
way.
and yeah, he's on his
Mm.
way. So no, and again that fan film that they created was great, but I can see why they're
Mm.
going with a Tom Holland style of an actor that can push on for 5-6 movies if they really need, and if it busts, they tried and it didn't work. So, is there anything to add, Mace, or I reckon we're sliding off here?
Yeah, we're sliding off. We're pushing time for
Yeah,
today, so we'll leave our recommendations for next week.
yeah,
But yeah, and we'll just throw out to the one recommendation we did get on our Instagram post
yeah,
from Emilio.
yeah,
So you had a few good lists. You had a pretty good list here. You had Mortal Kombat
yeah,
and Tomb Raider and Warcraft is your top three.
yeah,
And yeah, from listening to us, hopefully, yeah, you agree on our points
yeah,
we've made there. And shout out to our one American listener, Charlie Holt.
yeah.
Thanks for being a dedicated listener.
Dedicated listener and fan. But again, guys, I think this is it's a really interesting thing that shows time has changed
Mm,
in these movies, and they're pushing in a new direction, hopefully for the better. And
yeah.
again, it's about supporting your content that you enjoy. Also, so Mace, where can have you watched anything though in the last week quickly or not?
I've watched, quite a bit, but
Yeah.
I'll discuss it next week.
We'll
Yeah,
discuss it next week.
I've
Okay.
played and watched a lot. Yeah.
Okay, cool. We'll leave that for next week, and we'll chuck it up there. But again, if you're watching or playing anything during the week, don't hesitate to send us a message on Twitter, Instagram, or slide into our DMs on the old TikTok.
Yeah, or check out the website.
And yeah, check out the
Screenblend.net.
website. And you can follow Mason and me in the descriptions below on all the forms of social media. And again, thank you for everyone for subscribing, giving us a rating. It's really, really important. Takes you 10 seconds. And just give us 5 stars. 5 stars is pretty easy. And just say greatest podcast ever. Video game movies. But yeah, just send that through, guys. And it is really helpful. And thank you again for listening. Mason, again, a pleasure to see you via Zoom.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you, guys,
Every
and see you
week.
later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.